love, lies, and custody battles, the shocking turn of events at General Hospital. The picturesque town of Port Charles has witnessed countless dramatic moments, but the recent developments surrounding Willow Tate, Drew Kane, and Michael Corinthos have left residents reeling from shock and betrayal. What began as a passionate romance has spiraled into a custody battle that threatens to tear families apart and reveal secrets that no one was prepared to face. A marriage built on shifting ground. The wedding bells rang loud and clear when Willow Tate and Drew Kane finally exchanged vows, fulfilling what many thought would be a fairy tale ending. However, for one young voice in Port Charles, this union represented something far different, the beginning of a nightmare. Wiley, the sensitive and perceptive child caught in the middle of this emotional storm, found himself drowning in anxiety about his future. Struggling to process the reality of his mother's marriage to Drew, Wiley reached out to the one person who has always been his rock, his father, Michael Corinthos. In a heartbreaking conversation that exposed the raw vulnerability of a child torn between two worlds, Wiley confided in Michael about his deepest fears. "I don't want to live with them," Wiley admitted, his voice trembling with emotion. "I don't want Willow and Drew. I want to be with you, Dad." Michael listened carefully to his son's confession, his heart breaking at the pain etched across Wiley's young face. These words, spoken with such desperate conviction, would become a pivotal moment in what was about to unfold a legal and personal battle that would shake the foundations of Port Charles society. For Michael, his son's happiness was paramount, and he knew he had to take action to protect Wiley from a living situation that was clearly causing the child emotional distress. The tension in the Corinthos household grew palpable as Wiley's unhappiness became impossible to ignore. This wasn't simply a case of a child adjusting to a blended family. This was a clear indication that something was fundamentally wrong with the arrangement. Michael began quietly documenting these conversations, knowing that what Wiley had shared with him might become crucial evidence in the custody proceedings that everyone could sense were imminent. The trial that could change everything. As if the emotional turmoil wasn't enough, Port Charles was bracing itself for a major legal showdown. A trial regarding charges against Willow, specifically suspicions surrounding the shooting of Drew Kane, was set to commence the following week. This wasn't merely a sidebar to the custody battle. It had the potential to completely upend everything. The implications of such charges could have enormous consequences for Willow's credibility as a mother and her viability as a custodial parent. The Port Charles courthouse was buzzing with anticipation and speculation. Legal experts and court observers were already analyzing how the trial's outcome might influence the custody proceedings. If the evidence presented at trial painted an unfavorable picture of Willow's character or judgment, it could provide Michael with a significant advantage in his fight for custody. The timing of these events, the trial scheduled for the following week, and the custody battle hanging in the balance created a pressure cooker of anxiety for everyone involved. Willow, acutely aware of how precarious her position had become, knew that she needed to get ahead of the impending legal challenges. She also understood that Michael would fight fiercely to keep custody of the children, particularly given Wiley's own expressed desire to remain with his father. The stakes had never been higher for the Tate family. The secret that shattered everything. In what would become the most shocking revelation of the entire saga, Willow made the decision to meet privately with Michael before the trial commenced. This wasn't a casual conversation between estranged spouses. This was a moment when Willow knew she had to lay bare a truth that she had been carrying like a weight upon her chest. Willow took a deep breath as she sat across from Michael in a quiet corner of the Quartermain mansion. The words she was about to speak would alter the course of everyone's lives, including that of a little girl who had no idea that her entire identity was about to be questioned. "Michael, I need to tell you something," Willow began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "It's about Amelia. The truth is, she's not your biological daughter." The silence that followed was deafening. Michael's face drained of color as he processed what he was hearing. The little girl he had loved unconditionally since her birth, the child he had held in the hospital after she was born. The girl he had read bedtime stories to and wiped away tears for was not genetically his own. The revelation felt like a physical blow. "What are you saying?" Michael asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as though speaking louder might make the words real. Willow reached into her bag and pulled out the DNA test results, sliding them across the table toward Michael. The scientific evidence was irrefutable. The numbers and markers on the page told a story that Willow had been living with for some time, a secret that had weighed on her conscience and her heart. "The DNA results confirm it," Willow explained, watching Michael's face as he absorbed the information. "I know this is shocking. I know this changes everything, but I needed you to hear it from me before the trial, before everything becomes public." Michael studied the documents in front of him, each line a testament to a truth he had never anticipated facing. His hands trembled slightly as he held the papers. "Who is the father?" he finally asked, looking directly into Willow's eyes. Willow hesitated, and in that hesitation lay volumes of unspoken pain and complexity. "That's complicated," she said quietly. An unexpected resolution. What happened next would have surprised those who only saw Michael as a bitter ex-husband fighting for revenge. Despite the shock, despite the betrayal, despite the emotional upheaval that threatened to consume him, Michael made a decision that reflected the depth of his character and his unwavering commitment to his children. "I still want custody of Amelia," Michael stated firmly, his voice growing stronger. "I don't care what the DNA says. I'm her father. I've been her father since the moment she was born. That doesn't change because of some test results." This declaration shocked Willow to her core. She had expected anger, rejection, accusations, but not this. Not this steadfast commitment to protecting a child simply because he loved her. Michael's resolve wasn't about biology or legal strategy. It was about doing what he believed was right for the little girl who had depended on him her entire life. "Michael," Willow began, but Michael held up his hand. "Wiley doesn't want to live with you, Andrew," Michael said, his tone direct but not unkind. "And now I know that Amelia isn't even your biological child. A judge will see that I'm the more stable, more committed parent. I'm going to fight for full custody of both children, Willow, not to hurt you, but because they need me." What lies ahead? As the trial date approaches and the custody battle looms on the horizon, Port Charles is holding its breath. The revelations that Willow has shared with Michael will inevitably come to light. Wiley's unhappiness with his living situation will be examined in court. The DNA evidence regarding Amelia will become a central point of contention. Yet amid all the legal maneuvering and emotional devastation, one thing has become crystal clear: the children's well-being must be the priority. Michael's steadfast commitment to caring for Amelia, despite learning that she is not biologically his own, demonstrates a kind of love that transcends DNA. It is a love born of devotion, presence, and the countless moments of fatherhood that comprise a parent's bond with their child. The trial will reveal new details, the court will make its determinations, and the custody battle will reach its conclusion. But regardless of what the future holds, the complexity of this situation with its tangled relationships, hidden truths, and the children caught in the middle serves as a reminder that Port Charles residents are never far from their next dramatic twist. In a town where secrets lurk around every corner and the past has a way of resurfacing, the Corinthos family's struggle for stability is just beginning. Next, we will learn about the issue of Caesar Faison's potential return and why this development has Port Charles residents trembling with fear. The mere whisper of his name sends shivers down the spines of those who remember the reign of terror this master manipulator once held over the city. The legend of Caesar Faison returns. Recent discussions circulating through Port Charles have centered on one of the most terrifying prospects the town has ever faced: the possible resurrection of Caesar Faison, arguably the most dangerous and cunning villain in General Hospital history. This speculation has reignited old fears and open wounds that many believed had finally healed after his supposed death 7 years ago. The man who seemed to have 9 lives may have cheated death once again. And if the rumors prove true, Port Charles is about to face its darkest hour yet. Anna Devane, the seasoned spy who has faced countless dangers throughout her extraordinary career, finds herself haunted by a possibility she can barely speak aloud. Before her recent kidnapping ordeal, Anna began experiencing unsettling feelings that Faison might still be walking among the living. These weren't mere paranoid delusions from a traumatized operative. Anna's instincts have been honed over decades of espionage work, and she knows better than anyone that if there's one person capable of orchestrating an elaborate death hoax lasting 7 years, it would be Caesar Faison himself. The circumstances surrounding Faison's death have always contained peculiar elements that never quite added up for those paying close attention. He was allegedly killed by his own son, Peter August, who also went by the name Heinrich Faison, a fitting end for a man who destroyed so many families, to meet his demise at the hands of his own flesh and blood. However, Anna has pointed out compelling evidence that casts doubt on the finality of his death. She's observed a disturbing pattern of resurrections connected to Faison's bloodline that defies logical explanation. Consider the remarkable fact that 3 of Faison's children were all presumed dead at various points, yet to have miraculously returned from beyond the grave. Nathan West, the noble police detective who represented everything good that Faison could never be, somehow came back into the fold. Britt Westburn, the brilliant doctor who struggled for years to escape her father's toxic influence, also returned when everyone had written her off as deceased. These resurrections weren't simple cases of mistaken identity. They involved complex circumstances that bear Faison's trademark manipulation. This pattern raises the terrifying question: if Nathan and Britt could return from the dead, what's stopping Peter August from making a similar comeback? Peter was arguably the most dangerous of Faison's offspring, having inherited his father's capacity for cruelty and deception while adding his own twisted innovations to the family legacy of villainy. Some insiders speculate that we may witness either Peter's physical return to Port Charles or discover that his consciousness has been implanted into Nathan's mind through sophisticated memory manipulation techniques, that kind of psychological warfare that Faison perfected over his decades of criminal enterprise. The origins of evil. To truly understand why Anna Devane lives in perpetual fear of Faison's return, we must journey back 35 years to 1990, when this monster first emerged from the shadows to terrorize General Hospital. His entrance into Port Charles wasn't random. It was rooted in connections that stretched back generations, creating an intricate web of relationships that would define decades of storylines. The origin story that producers crafted for Faison was deliberately unusual, yet contained remarkable depth that explained his obsessive fixations. In one of those strange coincidences that only exist in soap opera universes, Anna Devane and Holly Sutton once employed a nanny who happened to be Faison's mother. This seemingly insignificant connection created a rich backstory that writers would mine for years, establishing personal stakes that went far beyond typical hero-villain dynamics. When Faison initially appeared in Port Charles, he wasn't operating as an independent criminal. He was a key operative for the international crime syndicate known as DVX, eventually climbing the ranks through ruthlessness and cunning until he seized control as its supreme leader. Anna's involvement with DVX and Faison began through one of the most dangerous assignments of her career with the World Security Bureau. She became a double agent in an incredibly risky operation. On the surface, it appeared she had betrayed the WSB and genuinely joined DVX as a loyal member. In reality, Anna's mission was far more complex and perilous. Infiltrate the organization from within, gain the trust of its leadership, and systematically dismantle the entire criminal network piece by piece. This was espionage work at its most dangerous level, where one wrong move could result in torture and execution. However, Anna's undercover operation took an unexpected and nightmarish turn when Caesar Faison noticed her. What began as professional interest quickly morphed into a sick obsession that would dominate both their lives for decades to come. Faison became fixated on Anna with an intensity that defied reason, and this unhealthy preoccupation would drive countless crimes, kidnappings, and acts of psychological torture until the day he supposedly died. His obsession wasn't love in any conventional sense. It was possessive, controlling, and deeply disturbing. The Obricht factor. While Faison's obsession with Anna defined much of his criminal career, there was another woman caught in this twisted triangle who suffered in different ways. Liesel Obricht was deeply, madly in love with Caesar Faison, and she harbored intense resentment toward Anna for capturing the affection and attention that Liesel desperately craved. For years, Liesel's love for Faison blinded her to his true nature and led her to commit terrible acts in hopes of winning his approval and devotion. The dynamic between these three characters created some of the most compelling drama in General Hospital history. Now that Faison has supposedly departed from the mortal realm, Anna and Liesel have achieved something that once seemed impossible: a tentative truce, if not quite friendship. They've recognized that their years of bitter animosity and competition were manufactured by Faison's manipulations. With the puppet master removed from the equation, Liesel finally broke free from his toxic influence and began the long process of reclaiming her identity and dignity. However, during the years when Liesel remained under Faison's spell, she enabled some of his cruelest schemes. One of the most heinous acts she participated in was helping Faison fake Robin Scorpio's death, a calculated move designed to psychologically torture Anna by making her believe she had lost her beloved daughter. The torment that Anna endured during this period, believing Robin was gone forever, represents one of the darkest chapters in her life. This wasn't merely a criminal act, it was sophisticated psychological warfare aimed at breaking Anna's spirit completely. A history of kidnapping and deception. Throughout his criminal career spanning decades, Faison kidnapped Anna Devane so many times that it became a recurring nightmare she could never escape. Each abduction involved elaborate planning and demonstrated Faison's obsessive need to possess her, even though she made her revulsion toward him abundantly clear. But perhaps the most disturbing incident in their long history involved Faison's use of a highly realistic mask that transformed him into the spitting image of Duke Lavery, Anna's one true love and soulmate. This disguise allowed Faison to get physically close to Anna in the most intimate way possible. The mask was so convincing that Anna genuinely believed she was spending time with Duke, the man she loved with all her heart. When the horrible truth finally emerged that she had been with Faison all along, not Duke, Anna's horror and violation were absolute. This violation wasn't just physical. It was a profound psychological assault that left scars deeper than any physical wound could create. Faison rarely operated as a lone wolf in his criminal enterprises. He understood the value of strategic alliances with other villains, creating partnerships that multiplied the danger he posed to Port Charles. He collaborated extensively with Jerry Jacks during the terrifying plot to poison the entire town's water supply, an act of bioterrorism that threatened thousands of innocent lives. The partnership between these two master criminals nearly succeeded in devastating Port Charles completely. His alliance with Helena Casadini proved even more sinister and long-lasting. Together, they conducted experiments in mind control and memory manipulation that bordered on science fiction. Their most successful project involved Drew Kane, whom they brainwashed into believing he was actually his twin brother, Jason Morgan. This psychological manipulation was so complete and sophisticated that Drew himself couldn't distinguish truth from implanted memories, demonstrating the terrifying reach of Faison's capabilities. Faison possessed extraordinary skills in impersonation and identity theft that allowed him to commit crimes while others took the blame. The mask technology he employed was cutting edge for its time, requiring different actors to portray him when he adopted various disguises. Beyond using the Duke Lavery mask to violate Anna's trust, Faison wore that same disguise when he shot Jason Morgan and pushed his body into the harbor, fully intending for him to drown and disappear forever. Of course, Jason eventually returned after several years, as characters tend to do in Port Charles. In another audacious scheme, Faison attempted to assassinate Robert Scorpio while wearing a mask that made him look exactly like Luke Spencer. This plot demonstrated not only his technical capabilities, but also his strategic thinking by framing Luke for Robert's murder. Faison would eliminate an enemy while destroying the reputation of another rival simultaneously, the unkillable cockroach. When examining Caesar Faison's complete criminal record, the scope of his atrocities becomes almost incomprehensible. He has brainwashed innocent people into becoming his unwitting puppets. He has kidnapped numerous Port Charles residents, holding them captive for months or years while tormenting their families. He has murdered without hesitation or remorse when someone stood in his way. The psychological torment he has inflicted on his victims, particularly Anna, has left permanent scars that may never fully heal. What makes Faison particularly terrifying is his apparent immortality. He has cheated death so many times that people have stopped counting. In one memorable incident, Helena Casadini, herself no stranger to surviving impossible situations, planted explosives on a boat where Faison was trapped and detonated them, creating a fireball that should have incinerated anyone aboard. Yet somehow, like the proverbial cockroach that survives nuclear holocaust, Faison emerged from the wreckage and continued his reign of terror, a legacy of damaged children. Beyond his crimes against Port Charles in general, Faison's legacy of destruction extends most painfully to his own children. He was an absolutely terrible father whose toxic parenting created cascading damage across generations. Britt Westburn became a villain largely because she desperately sought her father's approval and validation. She committed terrible acts and made horrible choices, all in a futile attempt to impress a man incapable of genuine love or pride in his offspring. The revelation that Nathan West was Faison's biological son shocked everyone, but it explained why Liesl Obrecht had given him to her sister Madeline Reeves to raise. Liesl knew that any child raised by Caesar Faison would be corrupted and destroyed by his influence. By keeping Nathan far away from his biological father, she saved him from a fate that befell his half-siblings. Nathan grew up to become a good, decent man, a police officer who protected the innocent and upheld justice. This outcome was only possible because Faison never got his toxic hands on Nathan during his formative years. Peter August represents the darkest outcome of Faison's parenting. He is the son of Faison and Anna's evil twin sister, Alex Marica, combination of genetics that practically guaranteed a troubled individual. Alex hid Peter away after his birth, and he was adopted by another family. But Valentine Casadini eventually located the boy and, feeling some misguided sense of loyalty, delivered him to Faison. This decision would haunt Valentine for years to come. Faison made it brutally clear to both Britt and Peter that they would never be good enough to earn his respect or affection. No achievement satisfied him. No sacrifice impressed him. Eventually, he sent Peter away to boarding school, essentially abandoning him emotionally while keeping him under nominal control. Valentine, racked with guilt over delivering Peter to such a monster, tried to become a better father figure and look out for the boy's welfare. But the damage had already been done. Despite Peter's desperate desire to be nothing like his father, he ultimately became almost as evil and dangerous as Caesar Faison himself. The jealousy he felt toward Nathan, the good son who earned love and respect simply by being decent, ate away at Peter's soul until it corrupted him completely. In a moment of rage and envy in 2018, Peter murdered his own father, finally ending Faison's reign of terror, but simultaneously proving that he had inherited the family capacity for violence and murder. The current mystery, as Port Charles residents nervously await confirmation of the current situation, many hope that either Faison or Peter is behind the recent mysterious events, but not both. Having both father and son return simultaneously would create an unprecedented level of villainy that the town might not survive. The scenario of Faison and his most dangerous son working together or against each other would be absolutely terrifying for everyone involved. If the brain preserved in a jar on Kevin Collins' desk doesn't actually belong to Caesar Faison, as everyone assumed, then where is the real Faison? And whose brain is sitting in that jar? These questions keep Anna Devane awake at night, knowing that every moment of peace could be shattered by the return of her greatest nightmare.